I just got done watching the video where the Jet Ski brothers announced they're putting a V8 in their, what is it, GPR? Anyway, that's pretty crazy. In the last video, I talked about making a piece that ran up into this chamber here and fed water into the outer water jacket as well as into the upper or inner water jacket. And I think what I'm going to use to build that is this 1-inch round with a 1/2-inch hole in it. One reason why I kind of don't want to use this stuff, and this is one of those things where I'm just overthinking, but this center section is going to, how do I say, double, triple? It's going to be multi-purpose. So the air is going to enter from the supercharger and it's going to be split between the two manifolds. So it's going to split out from the supercharger and go into each side here. Now this piece, even though it's not terribly well designed, can act as a bit of a splitter to smoothen out the airflow as it goes in. And the air is going to be hitting this right before it goes into the engine, so this could have some cooling effect. The walls of this material are going to be a 1/4 inch thick, and so it's not going to transfer the heat to the water nearly as quickly. You ever get into one of those situations where you have 2 or 3 projects on the go and you can't get anything done because of that? I currently have my lathe set up to do boring on these cylinders, but I'm waiting for a coaxial dial indicator to do that. I think what I'm going to do is stop crying about it, cut a piece of this stuff off, and basically try to design this so that it's going to work for there. So I'll just mark this right here, and then I'm going to cut that off with a hacksaw like an ordinary Neanderthal. Why don't I just use my bandsaw? These deburring tools actually work really well for deburring the inside of a hole. If I'm trying to deburr the edge of something like this, I don't find they work that great. I prefer to just use a knife, like a utility knife, and be careful. All right, I'm going to find my tap and see if I can tap this out now. I found it. It wasn't even hard to find. Lubricant, some Buttercut I think it's called. Yep, Buttercut. Wow, aluminum cuts so nice compared to a big chunk of steel. This, I believe this stuff is 6160. It's just your run-of-the-mill crap extruded aluminum. Okay, we are good. I have enough threads. For me, nothing is ever as simple as just cutting off a piece and welding it in place. When I put this onto the manifold, it's quite obvious that the airflow wouldn't be ideal because it's going to create low pressure pockets around the sides of the pipe. That's a problem for 2 reasons. One, it's not very efficient. The air is going to get trapped and cause a lot of turbulence in here, which is going to slow down the airflow. And 2, it's also going to cause some of the fuel and oil to drop out of the flow and pool at the bottom of the intakes and just run into the bottom of the crankcase instead of going in as a nice even mixture. So, without going too far into that, I do realize that my supercharger is going to have some of that effect. I don't want to worsen it by adding turbulence to this area here. So what I'm going to try to do is machine out the center of this so that the wall thickness is about 100 thousandths. So around the area where this piece threads in, that's going to stay a 1/4 inch. And then up about this high, so say about 1 inch high, I'm going to make it so that the wall thickness is about 100 thousandths. And then what I'm going to do is actually cut this pipe in half. So I'll try to draw a line to show you guys how it's going to be cut. So this piece will be cut out, and then this can actually sit in like that on the metal. So instead of sitting out here, it's going to sit like this. That is about 600 thousandths, so I'm going to go 18 millimeters. I really wish I had my lathe working. I just spent 3 hours cleaning my lathe and converting it back over so that I can actually cut metal with it instead of just bore. I got the 1100 cylinders all bored out and ready for final honing. Still waiting on the pistons, although they'll probably get here a lot faster if I actually order them. So the idea here is to drill this out to 3/4 of an inch. The hole in there right now is 1/2 inch, and by thinning out the wall, it will hold more water in there and also create more surface area for the water on the inside, which will allow for better cooling. Also, the thinner wall will allow for better heat transfer, which will allow for better cooling. Aha, better cooling. So what you're saying is you want better cooling. Well, that isn't the right chuck. This one should work better. You know what's not going to work better? The fact that the camera is sitting on the handle that I need to turn to drill this hole out. Now I'm going to stick this in the mill, and I'm going to cut this in half. What I'm actually thinking about doing is touching off on the top, coming down 1/2 inch and making a mark on each side, and then cutting that with a saw, and then I will have a piece of material that I can use for something else instead of just milling this off and having it go to waste. Because I'm sure at some point I will be looking for something like that. All right, now I've got a mark on each side where I can cut. Was I not recording any of that? Okay, well, I finished milling this piece. I guess I wasn't recording it. I thought I was. And yeah, it sits in place right here. And then the water will go in through the bottom and up into the water jacket here. There will also be a small hole through here that feeds the outer water jacket, because there's going to be another air deflector here, or the intake runner, and then there's going to be a water jacket, and a small hole here will feed that. As much as I've been putting this off, I think it's time to start cutting ports into the mounting plates for the intake manifold. I need to cut this one out first for a couple of reasons. The main reason being that I need to see if it's going to be practical to weld the supercharger to this plate. Is find out if there is a way for me to take this supercharger apart. How difficult is it going to be? For a couple of reasons. One, this is an oil hole, an oil filler hole, and this is an oil level hole, I believe. And currently they are sitting upside down on the supercharger. Wow, this supercharger wouldn't have been usable it's been dropped on the mount and squished that hole. I mean, it would be usable, but those threads are wrecked. It was dropped pretty hard and landed like that. I'm going to have to remove as much as I can and see if there's a way for me to weld around the outside of the manifold. Also, I would like to do a nice job for the transition between my plate and the supercharger, and I can't really do that if this can't be taken apart, because I don't want aluminum filings to get in there if I can't take it completely apart. This is also painted. I'm sure that it just looks like it's aluminum from the camera, and in person it's, yeah, quite convincing, but it's just an aluminum paint that they've sprayed over the outside of it. Where I first noticed it was around these filler plugs. Oh, this is cracked. Somebody dropped this. It's a good thing I checked this. This cover's cracked from being dropped. First thing I noticed when I took it apart, there's a crack there, and they probably just have these in huge crates and just throw them in there on top of each other. This has been dropped and that's been smushed in. There's a nut missing. Oh, maybe that doesn't need to be there. I'm glad I took this apart. I'm pretty sure that nut is supposed to be on there. Let's see, can it just be flipped around? That's that way. And that is that way. They claim in the ad that these superchargers are refurbished. And you can, the thing that kind of saves me on this is that you can see that they painted over the dent. So it didn't happen in shipping, and it didn't happen after I got it. You can quite clearly see. Yeah, you can quite clearly see that it is painted over the dented area. So it was dented before it got quote unquote refurbished. Anyway, I guess that means I'm taking this completely apart to see what else maybe is screwed up inside here. Alright, after a little bit of heat, probably only about 45 seconds of heat, and it popped right off. Yeah, it's warm, but it's not burned my fingers hot. Well, when they claim that these things are refurbished, they're full of crap. They washed it down with some Verisol and painted it, quite obviously. These bearings have not been replaced. You can quite clearly see that they didn't even wash down the inside of the supercharger. You can see there's crud, oil crud built up here. And also here you can see a very basic wiping there, but if I run my finger across there, you can see the inside of the supercharger was never washed out. This dirt wipes off with a rag. There is a little bit of a gap there, but yeah, I don't like beating on it like this, so I'm going to put a little bit of heat into the bearings. I'm going to pop the seals out, and that way I won't burn the seals. Oh, I'm glad I took that apart. You call that refurbished, eh? That's a great bearing. That would have lasted a long time. Okay, that worked. It's got wear marks on the inlet. And they didn't even clean the inside of it out that well. You can see the dirt here from where some dirt was bypassing. That wipes right off, so they definitely didn't try to clean any of that out. Alright, well, fairly good news is that it is rebuildable, it will work. Bad news is that very likely this company is not going to be like, oh, well, we'll give you your money back and you can keep it, or we'll send you another one and you can keep it. They'll be like, you took it apart. So it's now your problem. The impact from the gun caused these to go out of sync, so they won't turn at all now. I don't know if this torch is big enough to heat this gear up effectively. Alright, it's hot enough that there's a little bit of smoke coming off of the gear. So hopefully that's hot enough to whoop. Yep, it is. It doesn't take a lot of heat, fortunately, because I don't have a big torch. That's interesting. That is interesting. They have like a little slipping clutch built into this gear, and that allows for them to line up properly, I'm thinking. That is interesting. This gear looks like it's actually two pieces. It looks like it's built so that it has a slipping ring in the center. So the part that actually attaches, and they have a keyway in it, but there's no key or keyway on this shaft. Not that engages with that anyway. When I got into this project, what I actually started out to do was cut some holes in this plate so that I could match it up to the supercharger. The good news is that the supercharger is all apart, so port matching will be pretty easy. Alright, it's fairly clear. I need to remove that. Alright, not that that's not a lot of fun, but I think I'm going to take this over to my mill. Okay, here's the semi-finished result. I still will probably put a bit of a taper on there, but I've got the shape cut out now, and so I can figure out where I need to build my other pieces to. It's pretty fun building this piece. Kind of excited to weld it all together, but I don't want to get ahead of myself and cause myself a whole lot of problems. So I'm going to leave welding it as long as I can and get everything else kind of cut out and pieced together and figured out, so that once I start welding it, I can kind of weld it start to finish without having to stop in the middle and do a bunch of fabrication work. I don't know how well I actually explained this thing, so I'll go over it really quickly and kind of tell you guys what the plan is. This piece is going to get welded on inside of the manifold like that. Water is going to come from the pump and go in the bottom fitting here. It's going to go up and fill a water jacket that is above the ductwork for the intake manifold. And it's also going to have a small hole in it here that feeds an outer water jacket. So that's basically the idea of that. It's going to be a lot of fun to weld this thing together. I am really excited to do this. Sometimes I feel like I'm not getting a whole lot done, but you add all the things together and we're getting pretty close to the point where I can start welding this intake manifold together. There is still a lot of work to do, and now I have the added headache of dealing with the eBay seller, seeing what they're going to do about this, and also very likely finding bearings and stuff for this, and also figuring out how it goes back together, because this gear is kind of confusing me. I'm going to have to kind of go through it in my head and figure it out. But I think this thing is to slip and allow the two rotors to mesh with each other properly. This shaft is directly driven, but they allow this shaft to slip via this gear so that it lines up properly. Maybe somebody will let me know in the comments. Well, that's going to do it for this video. It is currently 8 p.m. and I haven't eaten or drank anything today. I came out earlier and started doing some work on the 1100 cylinders. I finished boring them out and it turned out really well. Not sure if the camera can pick that up. They still need to be honed out and I need to get some pistons for them before I finish that up. Then I moved on to trying to do some work on the 650 manifold, which turned into taking the supercharger apart, and now I've got to get some pieces for that. Worst case scenario, I will get another supercharger. I really hope I don't have to do that, but I'll do whatever I have to do to make this project work. Anyway, that's going to do it for this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.